Trump, Putin, Clinton. The gray Alaskan sky hung heavy over Anchorage, as if even the heavens understood the weight of what had transpired the night before. The air was sharp and cold, cutting against the faces of the gathered press, their breaths visible as pale clouds in the morning chill. Reporters lined up outside the small A-field, their phones clutched tightly, voices low as rumors swept through them like a sudden gust of wind. No one spoke too loudly, but the whispers carried. Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, had allegedly branded Hillary Clinton as corrupt during a private exchange with Donald Trump. If true, it was a statement that could shake the foundations of American politics. But hey, on the frozen edge of Alaska, the story was only beginning. And as we dive deeper, you'll understand why this day will be remembered as one of the most explosive moments in modern history. Before we continue, welcome to Scandal Pulse, the place where hidden truths are dragged into the light. If you believe in holding the powerful accountable, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us because this story is only one piece of a much bigger puzzle. It was noon on August 16th, 2025, only hours after the summit that had brought together two of the most powerful figures in the world, Donald Trump, once again at the center of political storms, and Vladimir Putin, whose words always carried shadows of strategy and menace. What had been said behind closed doors was unclear. All anyone knew was that a storm was gathering, and when it finally broke, it would send shock waves across nations. Near the chain-link fence, ordinary people mingled with journalists. Maya, a young EMT from Anchorage, clutched a small thermos of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Her life had never brushed against the machinery of global politics before. But today, she stood here because the whispers touched something raw inside her. Her mother had adored Hillary Clinton, seeing her as a champion of women. Her father, however, had backed Trump with fierce loyalty. For years, Maya had learned to keep silent at the dinner table, never voicing her opinions. But now, as she stood in the biting wind, she wondered if the truth was finally going to rip through the silence she had lived with. A few feet away, Lena, a Gold Star sister from Mozilla, held tightly to a folded American flag she carried everywhere. It had been given to her after her brother's coffin was lowered into the ground, and she never let it leave her side. "I just want leaders to tell the truth," she whispered to no one in particular, her eyes wet with unspilled tears. That's all she wanted. Truth without spin, without games. Sirens cut through the icy air. The motorcade rolled in, black SUVs gliding into the A-field like predators. Then the door opened and Donald Trump stepped out. Cameras snapped wildly. The crowd pressed forward, and then something unexpected happened. He noticed Lena standing near the barricade with a folded flag. Instead of striding past, he walked toward her. Reporters stopped in their tracks, microphones lowered. Trump placed a hand on Lena's shoulder and said softly, "Your family's courage is America." The words weren't shouted for cameras. They were spoken quietly, almost privately. In that moment, for some, the bitter cold seemed to ease. Inside the airplane hangar, the air carried a heavy stillness. A podium stood beneath glaring lights flanked by the American flag. Rows of reporters filled the seats, the clicking of cameras echoing against the steel walls. Trump stepped up to the microphone, his expression steady. Last night's talks were tough. He began. No deal yet, but useful. His tone was calm, deliberate, unlike the fiery Trump many expected. Then he dropped the first spark. Yesterday, President Putin said something in private. His words, "Not mine." He said, "Mail-in voting makes honest elections hard." And he added, "You won by a lot." Those were his opinions. I'm telling you because rumors poison trust. Sunlight heals it. Gasp rippled through the hangar. Fingers flew across phones as reporters scrambled to relay the words. Trump lifted a folder from the podium, his hand steady. "We will push for stronger, cleaner elections," he continued. "Not to attack voters, never to protect them." The tension in the room grew heavier. And then his voice lowered. He also brought up Secretary Clinton. The very name electrified the air. Trump paused as weighing his next words carefully. "I'm not here to call names. I'm here to show receipt from the public record and to ask fair questions. At that exact moment, phones lit up across the hangar. Hillary Clinton had just posted online blasting Trump as unfit, criminal, and a disgrace to the nation. The timing was brutal. Reporters turned their cameras back toward Trump, waiting for his explosion. But he didn't explode. Instead, he gave a small, almost weary smile and tapped the folder again. America deserves facts, not shouting. He clicked a remote and the screen behind him lit up with old headlines, investigations, scandals, controversies, each one cited, each one drawn from public record. Trump read them not with venom, but with a detachment of a doctor reading from a chart. "If you say I'm lying," he said evenly, "let's open everything. I'll open mine. You open yours." Full sunlight. The hangar fell into a deep silence. Some reporters sat stunned, others thrilled at the prospect of chaos to come. Maya felt her throat tighten, not out of anger or excitement, but out of relief. Relief that for once the tone wasn't shouting or mudslinging. It was measured like a surgeon cutting into something ugly but necessary. Trump pressed forward, his words heavier now. "Last night, I heard harsh claims about American elections. They were not my words. They were his words. I'm telling you so you hear them from me, not from rumor." As he promised to provide a written summary to Congress and the public, Lena's tears finally spilled soft and unstoppable. Trump glanced in her direction before turning back to the cameras. "Truth is not revenge," he said. "It's repair." But even as his words settled, Clinton's fiery counterattack blazed across screens. Trump is a criminal. Trump is mentally unfit. Trump must resign to stop shaming this nation. Reporters grinned, some almost giddy, waiting for Trump to strike back. Instead, he sipped water and said quietly, pointing to the screen of Clinton's words, "See, that's what fear sounds like. That's not leadership. It's panic." Outside, the Alaskan wind rattled the steel walls like war drums. Inside, the crowd leaned forward, sensing that the real blow was still coming. Trump's next words proved them right. He lifted the folder again, gripping it tightly enough that his knuckles widened. "This is not my opinion," he said, his voice resonant. "This is history, documented. This is about corruption in power, fraud in the system, lies that hurt families like yours." He motioned toward Lena with her folded flag. "This isn't about Hillary the person. This is about what happens when leaders abuse trust." The room seemed to constrict around him as he read from the records timelines of scandals stretching back decades. Donations, deals, investigations that started but never finished. Whispers of influence traded for money or power. Every word tightened the news around a legacy. Then came the bombshell last night. Putin looked me in the eye and said she had hands in it. He didn't hesitate. He didn't stutter. He said, "Hillary Clinton is corrupt." Those are not my words. Those were his. The hangar erupted. Reporters dashed off text with trembling fingers. Some faces blanched, others lit with satisfaction. Ordinary people in the crowd didn't react with calculation. They reacted with good instinct. An older veteran stood up, his metals clinking softly. His voice cracked as he said, "Finally, finally." Someone says it out loud. Applause thunder. Not wild or hysterical, but heavy like the breaking of a damn long strain by silence. Trump didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He let the sound wash over the room, then spoke again. "This isn't about humiliating her. This is about protecting America, our children, our future. If corruption wins, America loses." In that moment, the hangar felt like the eye of a storm still, but charged with unbearable energy. Outside, television networks scrambled, cutting into broadcasts. Every channel replayed Trump's words side by side with Putin's shocking statement. In living rooms across America, families argued, cried, and prayed. In diners, truckers slammed coffee mugs on counters. Some shouted, "I knew it." Others whispered in disbelief, "I voted for her. I feel sick." Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton prepared her own response. When she appeared before cameras, her face was taut, her voice sharp, her fury unrestrained. "Donald Trump is not just a fool," she snapped. "He is dangerous. He is dragging America through the mud with lies fed to him by dictators." Her words spat fire. This is what happens when a criminal with no morals occupies the White House. But the more she attacked, the more uneasy ordinary Americans grew. On phones and in whispers, they asked each other, why so defensive? Why not just deny it? Why only name-calling? Outside her press hall, people weren't cheering. They were frowning, confused, unsettled. Back in Anchorage, Trump was already preparing his next move. Calm, deliberate, he collected documents, timelines, and evidence. When he returned to the cameras, his presence was electric, the hangar vibrating with anticipation. Yesterday, Putin said something shocking. He reminded, "Today, Hillary called me a scumbag. She called me mentally unfit. That's fine. I've heard worse. But she didn't deny the corruption. She just attacked me." Slowly, he opened his folder. Inside were decades of records, financial links, speeches, investigations buried by time. This isn't about the past. It's about a pattern of fraud, of lies, of manipulation. A pattern that America has paid for again and again. The screen lit with dates 1990s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020. Each one a chapter in a long story of controversy. Trump's voice cut through the air. "You deserve to know the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Because if corruption wins, America loses.